Good morning, folks. I'm Dr. Herb Cushing, Spectrum Chief Medical Officer. I'm also an infectious disease expert, and I'm here to talk with you about COVID today on the 1st of August, 2021. Yes, case counts are rising in Maine because our vaccination rate, even though it's high, is still not high enough yet. As of today, 68.3% of Mainers were fully vaccinated against the virus, and that's just not a high enough rate of vaccination to protect the entire population. So the unvaccinated folks in the state of Maine and in other states are the ones who are getting the virus in large numbers, transmitting it to others, and unfortunately many of them are becoming very, very sick and ending up in the hospital. So if you haven't had a vaccine yet, please go get it immediately. There's still time to do it, and remember that it takes 2 weeks after your second dose of a 2-dose vaccine series to be considered fully immune, and 2 weeks after the single-dose J&J vaccine to be considered fully immune. Herd immunity, we think, kicks in at about 75 or 80% of a population having the full vaccine series. So we at least need to get to that number. I hope that we can get even higher to make sure that more people are safe. I believe the vaccine is safe because I trust reputable sources of information about it. And those include the United States CDC, the Maine CDC, and peer-reviewed published presentations and studies of the vaccine that come from reputable research organizations, both in the United States and in other countries around the world. And the overwhelming majority of the evidence from all of that proves that the vaccine is very, very safe. There are rare side effects that can happen with any vaccine. There are a few that happen with the Moderna vaccine, there are a few that happen with the Pfizer vaccine, and there are some that happen with the J&J vaccine, and they're a little bit different for each one. But I have to stress that those side effects are very, very rare, and we can treat almost all of them very effectively. Please talk to your family physician or your gynecologist about the vaccine if you have. There's no need to wait for full FDA approval to get this vaccine. The need to get it is important now, and it could save your life now. Waiting a few more months to get full FDA approval is meaningless. The vaccines have been given to billions of people around the world and hundreds of millions of people in the United States. They're among the most studied and researched vaccines that we've ever developed, and they're certainly very, very safe. Waiting for FDA approval will add nothing to our body of knowledge about the vaccines. Fortunately, we've had time to develop this corona vaccine. When the SARS virus came out about a decade ago, it scared people, and work was begun on identifying ways to combat coronaviruses with vaccination. And when the MERS outbreak happened a few years ago, that work was reinforced and redoubled. So the vaccine that we're seeing now for SARS-CoV-2 really has a decade-long track record of research and development underlying its creation. And when SARS-CoV-2 was identified, it was sequenced, and a sequence for that particular virus was used based on the original SARS and MERS ones. So please, folks need to understand that this is not a rapidly or hastily developed vaccine. It's got a long track record behind it. The COVID vaccine doesn't alter your DNA, but I think folks might worry about that because they know that the two most prominent COVID vaccines, the one made by Pfizer and the one made by Moderna, use mRNA or messenger RNA to get into the muscle cells. And when in the muscle cells, the human body uses that mRNA to make protein. And the protein that's made is the spike protein of the virus. That spike protein is then released into the bloodstream, and the body recognizes it as foreign, makes antibodies to it, and thus you get an immune response to the spike protein of the virus. The mRNA that was injected and gets into the muscle cells breaks down very, very quickly, as all mRNA does. So it does not insert itself into the human gene and doesn't linger there. The risks of the vaccine, the major ones, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been associated with blood clots very rarely in a few people in a million who get the vaccine. It's also been associated with something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, a neurologic condition that causes paralysis, usually temporary. The mRNA vaccines have had much fewer in the way of side effects, but they have been associated with inflammation of the heart in younger folks who get the vaccine, the adolescents, and that's being studied by the CDC now. But they're all tremendously safe, and the chances of getting these side effects is extremely low. They're all very, very rare, but we know that the chance of getting COVID is very, very high, and the chance of dying when you get COVID is very, very high. The mortality rate has been 1.5% throughout this pandemic, and that's consistent around the world. So that means that for every 100 folks who are getting the COVID, 1.5 of them are dying. And the chance of having even a temporary serious condition for many of the vaccines, it's much, much lower than that. Your chance of getting in a car accident when you drive home today are much higher. Yes, if you've previously tested positive for COVID, it's important to still get vaccinated. Wait about 90 days. It's okay to wait that long before you get your vaccine. But the vaccine adds extra immunity and antibody protection that being infected with the virus itself doesn't give you. And also, we believe it will give you longer lasting immunity. The vaccine prevents severe disease and hospitalization against the Delta variant, fortunately. However, if you do get infected with the Delta variant and you're vaccinated, it's still possible to get ill with it and shed the virus in your secretions. So it's important, if you're vaccinated and you develop symptoms of infection, that you go get tested to see if you have coronavirus now. And then if you are, you should quarantine. Questions? If you're fully vaccinated and get COVID, you can be contagious, especially with this new Delta variant. The original virus, when it infected vaccinated folks, wasn't shed as much in the secretions as happens in unvaccinated people. But the Delta variant of the virus can be shed in a person's secretions in great amounts, whether they're vaccinated or not vaccinated. And that's the major reason underlying the CDC's recent recommendation for vaccinated folks to continue to wear a mask in indoor public settings in areas where there's a lot of transmission of the virus. Vaccine studies are happening now for children younger than 12, and I don't expect that we'll hear the results for a few more months. At the optimistic best, we might be able to start vaccinating slightly younger kids this fall, but I really expect it to start happening in the first quarter of 2022. And then, like the rollout of the vaccine with adults, it will take many months to get vaccine produced and to get children vaccinated. So we have to be patient with the childhood vaccines.